After the dramatic political reshuffle of 1992, Jiang Zemin did more than step out from Deng Xiaoping's enormous shadow. He effectively climbed onto the throne at Zhongnanhai. Once dismissed as a controllable stand-in, Jiang proved to be a shrewd political operator, patiently assembling a personal empire. And that was only the prologue. From March 1993, when Jiang became president and completed the three pillars of power, General Secretary, President, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission, the humble Deng Student Act ended. What followed was Jiang's signature approach: soft purges, hard control. He didn't always destroy rivals head-on. He preferred to drain them quietly, turning opponents into figureheads long before removing them, if he removed them at all. One major obstacle was Zhu Rongji, the reform-minded premier with a technocrat's backbone. Zhu was sharp, stubborn, and unusually blunt inside the leadership. In public, he looked like a modern Lei Feng, upright, direct, and indifferent to factional games. But to Jiang, that moral image was also Zhu's fatal weakness. Jiang let Zhu take the spotlight: enterprise restructuring, layoffs of millions, partial privatization of state giants, banking cleanups, while Jiang worked underneath the floorboards. He moved loyalists into the arteries of money and trade: the central bank, the finance ministry, customs, and commerce. Names tied to Jiang's circle rose not necessarily because they were the best, but because they were dependable. On paper, the system supported Zhu's reforms. In practice, it could stall funding, create bottlenecks, and manufacture policy failures. Then Jiang would appear as the calm problem solver with alternative solutions. Outwardly, Jiang praised Zhu as the finest modern technocrat. Internally, Jiang encouraged sessions of self-criticism and magnified every flaw in economic management. No dramatic denunciations were needed. Jiang's craft was to exhaust a rival's authority until the title remained but the influence vanished. Zhu, however, understood the game. He hinted in private that economic reform could not succeed without institutional reform. That was not an open rebellion, but in Jiang's eyes it was a dangerous signal, because institutional reform implied loosening the very machinery Jiang was building, a dense patronage network often associated with the Shanghai clique. Jiang's counter was subtle: don't ban reform, redefine it. Stability became the supreme principle. Politics leads the economy became the unspoken rule. State media shifted tone. No direct attack on Zhu, but a growing narrative that the premier's vision was idealistic and insufficiently cautious. By the end of Zhu's term, he still held the office, yet his power had been quietly siphoned away. Then came 1997, Deng Xiaoping's death. As the funeral closed one era, Jiang moved to consolidate the next. He understood that truly ruling meant controlling the gun and the money. In 1998, he pushed to separate the military from business activities. The PLA had become a sprawling commercial empire: hotels, factories, security companies, even printing and trading. Jiang's logic was simple: a wealthy military can develop ambitions. Professionalization became the justification for cutting the cash pipeline and tightening loyalty. At the same time, the state sector underwent restructuring. Weak state conglomerates were dismantled, banks reworked, enterprises partially corporatized. Much of this carried the banner Zhu had raised, yet the political credit increasingly flowed to Jiang. Beneath this modernization, a new space opened for red capitalists, business elites who were rich, obedient, and skilled at bowing at the right moment. In 1999, another turning point arrived: Falun Gong. The movement was not a conventional political faction and did not openly call for rebellion, yet it had tens of millions of practitioners across society, from rural citizens to cadres. On April 25th, more than 10,000 practitioners gathered peacefully around Zhongnanhai to petition. To many, it was silent meditation. To Jiang, it looked like a wordless show of force. proof that an organization could mobilize at the heart of power without permission. Jiang's response was absolute. Eradicate it thoroughly, with no bargaining. He created the 610 Office, an extra-legal body answering directly to him, empowered across policing, state security, propaganda, education, healthcare, and the courts. Repression machine followed. Nationwide media vilification, ideological campaigns, pressure on workplaces and schools, detention without normal judicial process, and coercive transformation. Even today, Falun Gong remains one of the most sensitive subjects in China's political information space. With the military disciplined, Zhu neutralized, finance and propaganda networks secured, and Falun Gong crushed, Jiang turned to another objective: removing dual power centers in the capital. The target was Chen Xitong, Beijing's top party boss and a red princeling, son of a revolutionary elder. Jiang sent loyalists from Shanghai to supervise Beijing, effectively planting eyes, disrupting personnel arrangements, and destabilizing Chen's base. Then the Central Commission for Discipline Inspection moved in. Chen was prosecuted and sentenced to 16 years for corruption and abuse of power, one of the first high-profile princelings to be publicly destroyed. The message was clear: no one was untouchable. The era of old revolutionary pedigree as political immunity was ending. Jiang's rules were now the ceiling. But Jiang wanted more than raw control. He wanted a theoretical legacy, something that could place his name beside Mao's thought and Deng's theory. That ambition produced the Three Represents. The doctrine served two purposes. It shored up ideological legitimacy, and it justified the incorporation of new elites, private entrepreneurs, compliant intellectuals, and local power brokers into the party's political architecture. It also became a vehicle for promoting Jiang's people deeper into institutions, banks, state conglomerates, and academic circles. Two pillars of Jiang's post-retirement influence were built through personnel. One was Zhou Yongkang, a former oil engineer without a revolutionary family background, precisely the type Jiang liked: clean resume, controllable, grateful. Zhou rose through Sichuan and became Minister of Public Security, then a top security boss with access to internal reports, recordings, dossiers, and political secrets. The other was Xu Kaihu, a quiet political climber elevated within the military leadership. Under this arrangement, the armed forces became not only a fighting institution, but also a political vault, ranks and positions increasingly shaped by money, loyalty, and backroom deals. Together, the security apparatus and the military leadership formed a hidden axis that could protect Jiang even after he stepped off the front stage. That protection was crucial in 2002, when Jiang formally yielded the title of General Secretary to Hu Jintao. On paper, power transitioned. In practice, it didn't. Jiang kept the chairmanship of the Central Military Commission until 2004, holding the real coercive leverage. For years, Hu led as a CEO in name, while the old boss retained the keys. The atmosphere inside Zhongnanhai became tense. A system with two centers, one with legitimacy, one with substance, creates paralysis because no one dares move outside the invisible boundary. By the mid-2000s, pressure grew. Some of Hu's initiatives, administrative reforms, center-local adjustments, greater academic openness, were delayed or distorted by organs still dominated by Jiang's network. During major crises in the early 2000s, parts of the military and health bureaucracy, long treated as sensitive domains, appeared reluctant to fully align with Hu's direction, and state media sometimes downplayed Hu's leadership signals. Criticism also emerged indirectly from within the defense intellectual sphere, targeting entrenched patronage and stagnation. In 2005, Jiang finally relinquished the military commission chairmanship, closing his last formal post. Yet the web remained. Hu entered the 17th Party Congress, 2007, determined to reduce Shanghai clique dominance. A key move was easing Zheng Qinghong, Jiang's chief organizer, into retirement. Quietly, figures tied to Jiang's era were pushed away from the core, and interest groups rooted in oil, banking, and state conglomerates faced growing scrutiny. Still, one trump card remained: Zhou Yongkang, who controlled the security and legal system at an extraordinary scale. Zhou's reach, surveillance, policing, courts, internal discipline, made him a potential state within the state. In 2009, during unrest in Xinjiang, Zhou reportedly sidelined Hu's role and acted decisively, reinforcing the image of a powerful security baron with semi-autonomous capacity. Hu responded less by frontal attack than by changing the political narrative. Scientific development and a harmonious society signaled a counter to the earlier era's GDP at all costs logic, an attempt to reclaim legitimacy through equity and social stability rather than pure growth. Meanwhile, the succession chessboard formed. Jiang's camp sought someone not belonging to Hu's faction and seemingly controllable, an acceptable middle. Xi Jinping emerged as that figure, the son of a revolutionary veteran, not as liberal as some, not as aligned with Hu's preferred successors, and safe enough for elders to tolerate. Yet after Xi took the top post in 2012 and the presidency in 2013, he moved fast and violently against the very networks that had helped shape the old order. The anti-corruption campaign, Tigers and Flies, functioned as both moral crusade and political dismantling operation. Bo Xilai, a rising figure admired by Zhou, fell first after a family scandal and a foreign businessman's death. Bo received a life sentence in 2013. Then came the shock. Zhou Yongkang himself was taken down in 2014. The first former Politburo Standing Committee member to face criminal prosecution in decades, shattering a long-standing taboo. Around the same time, Xi's campaign hit the military. Guo Boxiong and Xu Kaiho, both powerful generals tied to patronage networks, were purged for corruption. Jiang's old machinery, often framed as the Shanghai clique, was fractured, absorbed, or erased. From around 2020, Jiang's name largely vanished from Chinese media. No images, no public presence, no symbolic celebrations. When he died in November 2022 in Shanghai, his last stronghold, the announcement was brief, careful, and emotionally restrained. There was no nationwide outpouring comparable to the mourning for earlier giants. What remained was an uneasy historical verdict, an era of rapid growth and global opening. Yes, but also an era stamped by deep corruption, hard repression, factional manipulation, and a style of rule that many described as a modern red mafia politics. And so the story circles back to where it began. Jiang rose through crisis into the center of the state, built a system that survived his formal retirement, and was ultimately dismantled by a successor who refused to share the board. In the end, his legacy did not conclude with a triumphant finale, but with a cold, controlled silence, as if history delivered the same kind of ending Jiang so often used on others. No public spectacle, no mercy, only the quiet closing of the door. Yet to understand why Jiang's system endured for so long, you have to see the deeper mechanism behind it. Jiang didn't rule like a single dictator shouting orders. He ruled like an engineer building an ecosystem where loyalty became infrastructure. He understood that slogans fade, but appointments remain. If you control who gets promoted, who gets protected, and who gets punished, you don't need to hold the microphone every day. Your voice stays inside the system, echoing through other mouths. This is why Jiang's post-retirement period matters as much as his years in office. Many leaders step down and disappear. Jiang stepped back and became something else, a hidden shareholder of power. He no longer needed direct authority, because the system had been designed so that anyone seeking safety, career advancement, or access to resources would instinctively align with the old network. In that kind of environment, even a new leader must move carefully, because removing one person is easy, but removing a web can tear the entire structure. And the web wasn't only political. It was financial, bureaucratic, and psychological. The deeper you go, the more you see how power is not simply about positions, it's about control over risk. Jiang's people often controlled what others feared: audits, discipline, police files, media exposure, career sabotage. When fear becomes currency, the most powerful man is not always the one who speaks the loudest, but the one who can quietly decide who falls and who survives. That's why Xi's rise turned into such a collision. The anti-corruption campaign was not just a cleanup operation, it was a system reset. It aimed to break the old model where factions could treat the state like a marketplace, trading protection, influence, and money through personal networks. Under Xi, corruption became the official justification, but the deeper objective was structural. No rival center of gravity could be allowed to exist, especially not one linked to a former supreme leader. In that sense, Zhou Yongkang's downfall was symbolic beyond imagination. It wasn't only the fall of a tiger, it was the public execution of a principle: that the security apparatus, the courts, and the police could serve a faction, not just the state. By striking Zhou, Xi was telling the entire elite class, the era of untouchables is over. The political insurance policy that Jiang had built, security plus military plus patronage, was being canceled. But here comes the irony. Jiang once believed he was creating stability. In the short term, he did. He reduced uncertainty, suppressed threats, and kept the party's grip tight during a period of explosive economic transformation. Yet the same architecture of control also produced its own dangers, because the more a system relies on loyalty networks and fear-driven discipline, the more it risks becoming brittle. It may look calm on the surface, but underneath it accumulates resentment, corruption, and paralysis. So when Jiang finally disappeared from public view, the silence was not only personal, it was political. Silence was a way of saying, this chapter is closed, and it will not be celebrated too loudly. Even his death announcement carried that cold efficiency. No grand storytelling, no ideological fireworks, just the minimum ritual needed and nothing more. And that is perhaps the most chilling conclusion of all. Jiang mastered the art of controlling narratives, yet history returned him a narrative that was almost deliberately empty. A leader who spent decades shaping the script of others, ended with a closing scene where the camera refuses to linger. Because in the end, power in Zhongnanhai is not a crown you keep. It is a chair you borrow. And the system Jiang built, soft purges, hard control, invisible networks, became the very logic that later erased his presence. He rose through the machinery. He ruled through the machinery. And when the machinery changed hands, it swallowed him the same way it swallowed everyone else, quietly, completely, and without apology.